What is up, everybody? Welcome back. We got another NFL episode of Slow Your Roll. Big week this week. We're 1 week out from the playoffs. Teams are fighting for spots, fighting for seeds. Madness took place last week on Saturday night. Cowboys, Lions. I don't know if you all saw that. That was crazy, but it's left us with a crazy situation in both divisions now in terms of seeding, playoffs, all that. So I thought today, what better place to start than talking about some of these games that have some big implications moving forward. What do you guys think?
There's
Go ahead.
there's a lot of big games. I think one of the biggest games we have to start with is obviously the Bills and the Dolphins. That's for the division. Obviously, the Dolphins already clinched, but the Bills, if they win, they can take the division, make the playoffs, and force the Dolphins to be a wild card. Obviously, whoever wins that game gets a more favorable opponent in the first round of the playoffs. Obviously, the bye isn't up for grabs, but the division is a huge thing. And the Bills, they've been up and down. The Dolphins have been up and down this season. So both teams really have a lot to prove. And they're playing a division rival. They're playing a team that is obviously good. The Dolphins just had a bad loss. The Bills have, like I said, been up and down. So it should be interesting to see who wins this one and who takes the division.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a big divisional rivalry game, and I feel like the Dolphins have a lot to prove. If I could be wrong, but I think they still have yet to beat a team with a record over 500. So they're going to need some experience in doing that before they run into the playoffs, or else they'll probably be first rounded. And then Buffalo obviously needs a win to secure their playoff spot and potentially win the division, which would be really favorable for them going forward because they could obviously get a first round bye. And home field advantage in Buffalo in the winters would be very crucial for them, as a lot of those teams, like maybe Jacksonville, Houston, even the Dolphins, would struggle to go up to Buffalo and win a game in the cold. So I think this is a really big win that the Bills need in order to make a Super Bowl run.
And we saw what happened last time. I mean, what was it, 48-20 Bills?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the Bills just match up really well against the Dolphins in terms of their strengths and the Dolphins' weaknesses. And I think that really got exposed last game. Like, as soon as the offense got off to a slow start for Miami, Buffalo just piled it on, and, they were just left playing catch-up the whole game, which obviously never happened when the opposing team scores 48 points. But I just think that matchup, I think, favors the Bills super heavily just in terms of, positional matchups and those types of advantages. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, something Buffalo is really good at is just slowing the game down and kind of running through. They have a big physical team, starting with that O-line and their quarterback, obviously. So I think they're really good at controlling the time of possession throughout a game and just wearing down a defense. And I think that really takes a toll on Miami, as they kind of like to play fast and they're a big play team. So I think Buffalo dominating the time of possession and slowly wearing out that Dolphins defense is a really big advantage that they have going into this game.
For sure, Buffalo is most definitely the more physical of the two teams. Miami's speed is their biggest strength, but it can be a downfall at times in some aspects. Matt, do you have anything else to say about that?
One thing I want to point out too is, Miami, especially these last few weeks, have just been decimated by injuries. Bradley Chubb is probably out for the playoffs. He's obviously out for this game. I forgot the name, but like Jalen Phillips, I think his name, the other edge rusher. So they lost their two best edge rushers, in the span of like 3 or 4 weeks. Raheem Mostert's been up and down. Tyreek Hill's been, up and down these last few weeks. So they have a ton of injuries. And, playing the Bills, like that's not a team where you need your best players out there, right? So they're going to have a weak kind of roster going into it. One thing I will say is the game is in Miami, which, is obviously more favorable as we're in January. That home field advantage for Buffalo is really big in the cold. But now that the game's in Miami, we could see, maybe the Dolphins have more advantages in that sense, but it should be interesting, yeah, for sure.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to a different game. Let's go. Let's go Rams Niners. That's an interesting one because the Rams are right on the verge of a playoff spot, and then the Niners are fighting to hold on to that 1 seed. I don't believe they've clinched it yet. I think the Eagles are still in play for it. Is that correct?
No, Niners had the 1 seed.
Niners clinched it?
Yeah.
Okay, Niners clinched it. So Rams are sitting right at the edge there. So with them clinching the 1 seed, is this like a game that the Rams should win and secure a playoff spot?
Yeah, I don't think we'll see Purdy. I don't think we will see McCaffrey and a lot of those
Yeah.
big players for the Niners. And I'm pretty sure the Rams have already clinched the playoffs, but there's still a lot of ways they could move up and down in seeding. So they're still going to want to play their guys and win this game. So this will be an interesting game to look at in that NFC playoff picture because there's still a lot of movement that needs to be done between like seeds 4 and 7. So yeah, this will definitely be a game to keep an eye on
I think
for
there's
sure.
definitely more favorable teams to play towards the top of the NFC. If you can,
Yeah.
stay in that, if you can get to like that 6 spot, you can be playing like Detroit or Dallas. You really don't want to be playing like, the Niners or anything like that in the second round.
Yeah.
So it's important they win that game, and they got the Seahawks and the Packers right behind them. Those are some interesting teams too. Those are teams that can, seem like they can beat anyone week to week as well. So that's
Yeah.
definitely interesting. Matt, you got anything on that?
One thing I will say is I think, the Rams are pretty much locked into the 6 seed at this point, assuming they win, which, playing a 49ers team that's going to be missing a lot of their starters is pretty favorable. Also, from being a Seahawks fan, the NFC West has this kind of dynamic where the Rams tend to beat the 49ers, like upset them when it comes down to it. So I think we should see a Rams win. But obviously they're not going to be the 5 seed because that's going to be the Cowboys or the Eagles, whoever
Yeah.
doesn't win the division.
Yeah.
So it's going to be the Rams probably as the 6 seed. So it should be interesting to see who they play in the playoffs.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, for sure. What else do we got on tap for week 18?
I mean, Falcons play the Saints, right? So that should be a pretty big game in terms of that division. As I mean, both teams need a win in order to have any hope at making the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I know they both
Right.
need help along with a win,
Yeah.
but it's still gonna be a really hard fought game because both teams do need a win. So that'll be a fun game to watch. And that game's those are typically entertaining, those Saints Falcons games, and it's a pretty big rivalry down there. So that'll be a good game to keep an eye on for sure.
So,
For sure.
the Bucks winning takes out any chance for both those teams, correct?
I think so. Yeah. So they're going to need a Bucks loss,
Okay.
which would be
Okay.
pretty impressive because they play the Panthers, so they should win that.
Okay.
Um,
I think
you
What would
know,
the Falcons need then? Being 7-9 right now, obviously they need the win plus the Bucks loss. Do they need something on top of that? Or are they in with that? All three
I
sitting
think
at 8-9.
no.
they would.
So the Falcons are 7-9 right now, and the Saints and Bucks are 8-8. So I'm pretty sure the Falcons. I'm not exactly sure, but the thing with the Falcons is I don't think they're going to be the wild card. The Saints have a chance to be the wild card if they beat the
Yeah.
Falcons, even if the Bucks still win. So
Yeah.
that both those teams can make it, but it's pretty unlikely.
Yeah.
But the Bucks have the tiebreaker though, so if they win, they pretty much guaranteed to win the division no matter what happens in the Saints Falcons game. I don't think the Falcons can win the wild card, but they have a small chance of winning the
Win the
division.
Yeah,
division,
okay.
which is interesting. Yeah, and seeding in this NFC playoff race is really important, even more so than the AFC, because there's a lot of teams that are like a team in fifth is either going to be the Cowboys or the Eagles. That's a team you do not want to play in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, and like the Lions are good, but they're inexperienced, and they could be the 2 seed. So that could be a team that maybe would be an easier 2 seed than a 5 seed to play. So the NFC playoff race is going to be really important based on seeding. So I think all these teams in the NFC that don't have their spot locked up but are still going to make the playoffs have a lot to play for.
Yeah, I mean, the winner of the NFC South, like you're saying, doesn't really have a great position in that 4 spot because that's either the Eagles or
No.
the Cowboys. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting to a point where it's like, would you rather be a wild card at that point? I mean, it kind of just depends on who you think's the toughest at this point,
Yeah.
which is all up in the air. The Eagles have been really poor lately. Cowboys have
Yeah.
been a little stronger. So we'll have to see how that plays out for sure. Bears Packers. That's obviously an important one. The Packers are sitting
Yeah.
in a wild card spot right now. They were on fire for a while. They've beat some real
Yeah.
good teams. They've beat the Chiefs. Who else
Yeah.
have they beat this year? Any big teams?
They
in
beat the
there?
Lions. They beat the
They beat
Lions.
the
That's a
Lions.
big
Yep,
win.
that's a big win.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a big win. And the Packers have been hot. So But they've also been really up and down. But I think they guaranteed clinched the playoffs with the win against the Bears.
Yeah.
But that's a really hard fought rivalry, and it's in Chicago. So that game's going to be up for grabs. I think the Bears are really going to want to win that because they're going to want to knock the Packers out of the playoffs, just because that rivalry runs so deep. So that's going to be such a fun game to watch. I think it'll be pretty close, as the Bears will definitely fight a lot harder than than they should,
For sure.
for being out of it. So it'll be a good one to keep an eye on.
This is pretty much the exact same position Green Bay was in last year too, last week of the season, fighting for a playoff spot against an NFC North opponent. So maybe they'll learn from last year and be able to. I mean, I don't think the Bears are as deadly of a team as who they faced last year in the Lions, but I think they're definitely in a spot where they could get upset, and the Bears are just playing to keep him out. I mean, Justin Fields is playing for his job right now in Chicago to be the guy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the Bears do have things to lose, and players do have things on the line. So this isn't a throwaway game, even though they're eliminated from the playoffs. They're gonna put up more of a fight than you'll see from like other teams, like Bucks, Panthers. Probably, I don't think you'll see a ton from the Panthers there.
Right. And I could be wrong too, but I'm fairly certain that if the Packers win, then they're in.
Yeah,
So,
they are.
yeah,
Obviously,
100%.
win or in.
Yeah.
But it's
Huge
also
game for them.
lose and you're out, I think. So I mean,
Right.
Is it the same
they have
situation
everything
for
to play
the?
for.
Is it the same situation for the Seahawks winning in?
No, the Seahawks. We had a bad loss to the Steelers last week.
Yeah.
I think we need because the Packers have the tiebreaker over us.
Oh,
You need a Packers loss.
Yeah, so we need the Packers. We need the Bears to beat the Packers, then probably us win. We play the Cardinals, so.
Well, I mean, you guys should have the win in the bag there with the Cardinals. So it really comes down to if the Bears can take down the Packers.
I mean, I don't know. They just
I wouldn't
beat
be
the
so
Eagles last
sure.
week.
I mean, they just beat the Eagles. It feels like
okay.
they've been
That's true.
fighting upward.
That's true. But
Yeah.
like the Eagles have not been the same Eagles we saw for the first like 12 weeks of the season.
That's true.
Yeah.
Like it is a different team right now, and I keep seeing stuff every day about the locker room just being like in absolute shambles, and AJ Brown throwing a fit about something new.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
For sure.
Not the right time for the Eagles to be having these problems. So we'll see how that goes for them into the playoffs.
Definitely.
Okay. Let's segue this into a little discussion about who are the teams you don't want to play in the playoffs right now. Who are those teams that are like, I want nothing to do with playing them early on in the playoffs? What do you guys think?
A sneaky team, as we mentioned earlier, is I would not want to play the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs, especially if they're at home, because as opposed to a lot of these teams in the AFC, the Bills have playoff experience in these past few years. They've been in these big games. They've won some big games. They've lost some big games. So they know how to play in these intense, high-pressure games. And then if they have that home field advantage, nobody wants to go up to Buffalo in January. I mean, we could see games at negative 10 degrees with 40-mile-an-hour winds. So the Bills are a team that I would definitely want to avoid going to the playoffs, as they've been trending upwards and they have more experience than the Jags, the Browns, the Dolphins, the Colts. They have a lot of experience. So I think Buffalo can make a deep run. I think we could potentially see them winning the AFC.
For sure. I like that pick, honestly. I think that the Bills, definitely like you're saying, have the experience. I mean, Josh Allen, when he started playing the playoffs, he's a completely different player. I mean, we saw that game against the Texans years back. He's come a long way since then in some battles with like Patrick Mahomes and stuff. So I think he's more well-equipped for it. And if they get home field advantage, I really would not want to play the Bills in any type of situation. Matt, do you have a team you want to look out for?
Yeah. My team is the Detroit Lions. This is a hungry team. Like they haven't had success in so long. At least the first game is going to be played in Detroit at Ford Field. So that fan base is going to be crazy. The crowd's going to be loud. It's going to be passionate. And the team's already more pissed off now after that game against Dallas. Like they've got, some furiosity. I would not want to play the Lions right now. This is a well-coached team, very angry team, very, fierce team that I would not want to play round one.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, when was the last time the Lions had a home playoff game? Were any of us alive?
Nope.
Probably not.
Nope, probably not.
Nope.
So Ford Field is going to be
wait,
rocking
no,
for that game.
no, wait. I think we were.
Maybe 2015 or 2014?
2014
Matt
against the
Stafford there.
Cowboys, yeah.
Yeah, that was at home?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so they have one home playoff game this decade, if even that. So, to my point,
No,
Ford Field
that couldn't have been at home because they didn't win the division.
Oh
So
yeah,
it had
that's
to be
right.
New York.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep. That's right. Yep.
yeah. So Ford Field is going to be electric for that game. So that'll be a
Yeah.
fun one. I do agree with that pick. The
Yeah.
Lions are going to be
Ford
a tough
Field has
team to
never
beat.
seen a home playoff game.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Crazy.
We're talking about
Yeah.
us. The stadium hasn't seen one, so
yeah,
that'll be electric there for sure. I'm
yeah.
not sure they've reported as eligible for all these big talks yet, though. Honestly, so my
That's
sleeper,
crazy.
my sleeper team, honestly, that I wouldn't want to play in the playoffs, assuming they make it, is the Seattle Seahawks. That is it. They scare me in the sense that, that team can
You guys are
explode.
complimenting each other, huh?
That team could
Yeah.
explode on offense any given day. They could
Yeah.
have a complete dud or they could go absolutely off. There's no in between. I'm not saying they're gonna win if they make it. I'm just saying that it's a scary team in the sense that you don't know what you're gonna get out of their offense. So I think just for
Yeah.
that reason alone, I have to put them as a team that would be in a wild card spot that I wouldn't want to play.
I mean, the Seahawks and Packers both feel like teams of the same caliber that can just beat anybody at any time, anywhere. So those
Right.
teams are going to be tough outs in the early rounds of the playoffs.
Yeah.
I agree with that too, but at the same time with the Seahawks, like, while we can beat anybody, we also like can lose to anybody. Like, we just
Yeah.
let Mason Rudolph like go crazy on us. Najee Harris went crazy. Jalen Warren went off. Like, we have defensively, I think, one of the worst defenses in the league. We just lost Jamal Adams and a handful of others. So I don't know. I respect the compliment. I like people that are optimistic about the Seahawks, but I don't know about that one, to be honest.
Okay. Okay. I think a lot of their problems lie within the secondary. I mean, you talked about losing Jamal Adams. I think I've talked in the past about him being more useful as almost just like a sub linebacker every single play, not a guy dropping
Yeah.
into coverage because I think he is a really good player in that sense. And it does suck that is he injured? Is that right?
Yeah, well, kind of.
Kind
It's
of.
it's,
Okay.
it's complicated, but yeah, he's injured.
Yeah, so no, that does suck because he is a great player and he's a great athlete. I just think that he's misutilized on that Seattle defense and he gets
Oh
hung
yeah.
out to dry in coverage when he could be doing other things. I think sticking him in the box, honestly, as like an outside linebacker or just sending him on blitzes, stuff like that, is where you would see him more excel. And I think just kind of those mismanagement of great athletes on Seattle's defense is a big reason for the problems they have. I mean, do you agree with that
For sure.
as somebody that watches the Seahawks closely?
Yeah, I think part of the reason for that, why that happens, is because even though the players are different, we're still running a lot of the same defensive concepts that were popular in the Legion of Boom. We see a lot of cover three, and because of that, that forces a safety to drop back. I will say, when Jamal Adams, when we first got him, so that was 2020, I believe, the COVID season, we did see a lot of those packages where we saw him off the edge as a rusher. I think he broke the record that season for the most sacks by a defensive back in NFL history. But ever since that season, 2020, we haven't seen that nearly as much. And he's been injured. I believe he missed all of 2022 or almost all of
Yeah.
2022. He got injured in like the first game or second game or something like that. So we need to use him more properly. He is running out of contract, so I wouldn't be surprised if he'll never play again with the Seattle Seahawks. He's obviously had some off the field stuff, which has kind of been weird. He's not the best locker room guy from what I've been seeing. So I think there's a lot of variables with Jamal Adams, a lot of things you have to consider, but I think he's a good player, and I do think we could use him better.
Yeah, absolutely. Were there any other games we wanted to touch on before we move on to anything else?
I'm all good.
All good?
I think that those are the big games that we covered.
Okay, okay. Um, I don't know how big of a discussion this will be, but like MVP, I mean, Lamar Jackson is like so far and away the favorite that I don't think it's like possible for anybody else to
Yeah.
win. But does anybody have anything different than that to say about that?
No,
I think it's
mean,
weird
I feel
with his stats. Like, I mean, I
Yeah,
think that's pretty
yeah.
glaringly obvious. I think it's pretty messed
I just
up
think-
that CMC
yeah.
isn't considered. But
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I just think it's crazy how quickly this happened. I mean, I know, like, I think it was week 3 or 4 we were all on here, and me and Tyler said Lamar
Yeah.
Jackson pretty unanimously. But back
Look at
then,
that.
like, he wasn't nearly having the season he had now. I mean, I think, Brock Purdy was the favorite for a few weeks. McCaffrey, it was kind of those two. Dak Prescott was in there, but Lamar Jackson and the Ravens have just been playing out of their mind the last 5 weeks. And it's crazy how quickly, this happened. And I think he's definitely going to win MVP.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
think,
you go.
yeah, the thing with Lamar Jackson is a lot of people like to talk about his touchdowns, and he's not getting as many touchdowns as an MVP should. But I feel like Lamar has a lot of plays if you actually watch him. Where he makes a big play, makes a big pass, or runs the ball and gets them down to the 3-yard line, the 2-yard line, and then they just punch it in with a run, like Gus Edwards. So I feel like Lamar's touchdown count hasn't been very telling to who he has been as a player this season. And I do think he's been almost the most valuable player in the NFL, and I think that Baltimore Ravens team really revolved around him. And he's the reason why they've been so successful this year.
Okay, can I ask you a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
If you plug Russell Wilson into the Ravens offense, what's their record right now?
What are the Ravens right now?
Russ is better in every statistical category this season.
Okay, but what's the Ravens record right now? They 13-3.
No, is that right? I don't think. I think they're.
I think so.
I think they are.
Yeah. Okay, that's right.
Okay, I would say with Russell Wilson, they're 10-6, 9-7. I do think Lamar does a lot that people don't appreciate. He extends plays, he makes big runs, and he makes the throws needed of him. And I do think this season he's been the most valuable quarterback in the NFL. I don't know if he's been the most valuable player because of McCaffrey. But I do think he's been the most valuable quarterback. And if you want to look at stats, like we talked about on the previous podcast, Brock Purdy probably does have the best numbers along with record. But Lamar Jackson's been the most valuable player or the most valuable quarterback in the NFL this season. So that's why I think he's going to run away with this award.
Okay. So what do you think the Ravens' record would be if you plugged Russell Wilson?
I said 9-7 or
okay,
10-6.
9 and 7.
Now.
Okay. That's fair.
I agree.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
All right.
They have a great defense, great team, but Lamar really holds it all together.
Okay. That's fair.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's fair. I respect it. What are the Bears going to do? They just clinched the first pick in the draft. What are they going to do with that? I mean, we just talked about how Justin Fields is playing for his job, so I think that's definitely worth noting. But what do you guys think? What are they going to do?
And, it seems like Justin Fields has been better these past few weeks, and we don't have our guy Nick on here, the Bears fan, to talk about his team.
That's probably for the best.
Probably for the best, but Marvin Harrison, he looks like might be the best player in this draft. And I feel like when we have the number 1 overall pick, you just take the best player available. And I feel like Fields might be good enough in order to keep that job, but we'll see. I think it's either between Harrison or if they like one of the quarterbacks. If you like a quarterback, that's your guy, go get him. But if you're the Bears analyst and the Bears scouts and you're not a fan of any of these quarterbacks, and don't waste the number 1 pick on a quarterback you don't like. And that's just what I think they should do.
Okay. I think that's a pretty good assessment of it. Matt, do you have anything you wanted to say about the situation?
Yeah, there's a few angles to this. My first point is, with Justin Fields, I think one of the main things you have to look at is he's played well these last few weeks, but it is like the tail end of the season. When you're a franchise quarterback, you want to see sustained success throughout the season. You don't just want you just want to see him playing well at the end of the season to trick you into thinking that he's going to be good in the next year. So that could be one of the aspects. The other aspect I want to look at is with Marvin Harrison, if they were to acquire him, do you take him right at 1, or do you trade down to maybe 4 or 5 and risk someone else taking him that, someone might trade up for a quarterback. But what I think they should do is I do believe that they should stick with Fields for at least 1 year. I don't think Caleb Williams is obviously fantastic, but I don't think he's the generational quarterback that we all thought maybe a couple of months ago. But I do believe they should go with a receiver, ideally Marvin Harrison with their first pick. They do also have, I believe, the 9th or the 10th pick. I think they should take the best offensive line available. Just give, Justin Fields the most weapons you can get, and then there's no excuses for next year. If he doesn't succeed next year, if the Bears have issues, then that's the end of the line for him. But I do believe he deserves another year. I think they should give him an O-lineman, give him a receiver, maybe sign someone else in free agency and just, see how things go. But 1 more year, and then I think he's done.
Yeah. To your point, Matt, about do you trade down? I feel like if you have the number one pick and you have a guy that you like, you don't risk losing him. So I feel like if they really, really love Marvin Harrison, you don't trade down. You don't risk losing that guy that could be a cornerstone of your franchise for years to come. You just stick out with the number one pick and take him instead of maybe getting a few more assets, but you risk losing him.
Yeah, that's fair for sure.
Yeah.
Do you think that everything we've seen out of Justin Fields can be fairly analyzed with his situation? Like, do you think they've done enough at this point to where it's like, okay, yeah, like this is the actual best we're gonna get out of him? Or do you think we're still at a point where it's like there might be offensive coordinator problems, not enough weapons, or etc.?
Yeah, I think he has enough weapons. I will say that he's got Cole Kmet, he's got a decent backfield, DJ Moore, he's got solid receivers around him. I think the weapons is good. The offensive line is obviously a little bit shaky, and the offensive coordinator is obviously the main problem. A lot of Bears fans were talking about earlier in the season with their play calling. They weren't unlocking Fields like they should. So Fields being such a special talent, I feel like maybe another year on a different offensive coordinator could be worth trying out.
For sure.
Because if he pans out, obviously that's a generational quarterback you could have on your hands. But it just depends if the Bears have a guy in this draft that they like, because you're never going to have the opportunity to get a guy on your, like Caleb Williams maybe, on your team again. So it's really up to the Bears if they really like any of these quarterbacks in the draft. And if not, then I say go for Harrison. But if you do, take your guy and maybe trade Fields or find a different place for him.
Okay. I think that's a good way to look at it, honestly.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a Super Bowl pick in your heads yet? Have you guys figured out who you think is going to win it all?
I think.
I mean, I'm gonna go ahead.
Go ahead, Ty. No, you got it.
Okay.
You got it. I'm
gonna go with the obvious pick. I'm gonna have the Ravens playing the Niners in the Super Bowl. I know it's boring, it's chalk, but I think those are by far the best team in their conferences. I think in the AFC, it's pretty obvious that the Ravens have been significantly better than everybody else. They just killed the Dolphins. The Chiefs have been shaky. I know the Bills are on the rise, but they're still not at that level of the Ravens yet. So I feel like the Ravens really have the AFC in lock. And then with the NFC, the Eagles have been shaky, and the Cowboys have been up and down, and the Lions don't have as much playoff experience as you'd hope. So they're probably a few years out of maybe getting that Super Bowl. So I think the 49ers, just having a little bit more experience than the Lions and being a better team than the rest of the NFC will get them there. And the Ravens dominating the AFC will get them there. And then in the Super Bowl, I'm going to go with the Baltimore Ravens. I think the best quarterback will win the Super Bowl, with that being Lamar Jackson. So I think the Ravens, their defense is too good. They have such a good team around them, and Lamar Jackson's too good of a playmaker to lose that Super Bowl.
I love how out of the teams you mentioned, you noted like not enough playoff experience, and then the team that you picked out for not having playoff experience is the only one with a QB that's been to a Super Bowl.
So that's true, but I mean the rest.
But
of their
Jared
guys,
Goff did not get the Rams to the Super Bowl. Let's be real.
And the rest of their team hasn't really had much experience.
Oh,
and
no,
even
for
Dan
sure.
Campbell, as a head coach, has no playoff experience. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And DC and OC both have no playoff experience either. So.
Yeah, and that's as a coach, experience is just as important.
Yeah,
as
no, I was on
Yeah.
the same page with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Matt, Super Bowl.
Yeah. I agree with the Ravens. I do think the Ravens are by far the best team in the AFC. I think they're the best team in the NFL. But in the NFC, this might be a bit of a surprise. I think it'll be the Eagles that come out of the NFC. I know they've been shaky the last couple of weeks, and they just lost to the Cardinals of all teams. But I don't know. I have a gut feeling. I've always been super high on Jalen Hurts, even back when he was a rookie. I think he's still a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. And I really think that I know there's some locker room issues. There's some coaching issues. They had this weird thing with like their defensive coordinator where they gave it to Matt Patricia to start calling defensive plays over Sean Desai. That was kind of weird. But I think the Eagles, when it comes to the playoff time, they'll put the pieces together. That O-line is going to dominate on the front. Yeah. Obviously, we see the tush push, but we also see that in the run game and the pass game. I think, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, who might be injured, but I think A.J. Brown and that wide receiver core is going to come together. Dallas Goedert, it's been pretty solid since he got back from injury. I just feel like, they'll put the pieces together, and I just obviously in the season things look different, but when they match up one-on-one against teams, I just feel like they'll take that and just, outplay them. And I think the Ravens will defeat them in the Super Bowl if it comes to that. but I think the Eagles will take down the Niners, and I think they'll take down any other team in the NFC that gets in their way.
Okay, I respect that.
What do you got,
I think I'm gonna get like obscene amounts of hate for this, but I think my Super Bowl.
I know it's
I
coming.
think my Super Bowl is going to be Niners Chiefs. Honestly, I get the Chiefs have had their struggles. I don't think you guys are gonna argue with the Niners, but I get
No,
the Chiefs have had their struggles. I don't think there is a player in this league that plays better than Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs at this current moment. I think that the last time the Bills played the Chiefs, they only lost by a half of Kadarius Toney's foot. So I think that they're well equipped to beat the Bills, who you talked about as like a sleeper team. So I think once they get through that game, they're projected to play the Bills right now, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Assuming they get through that, which they've shown they're definitely capable of, the biggest issue is going to be their wide receiver core. One of the worst in the NFL, for sure.
Including Travis Kelce. Let's say that. He hasn't been great these past few weeks. Right?
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
I do think Mahomes can get... I think the Dolphins are a team that's fraudulent. I think they're very beatable. Yeah. So I think it really just comes down to the Ravens. I think we'll see a Ravens-Chiefs AFC championship, and I literally think that Mahomes versus Lamar's playoff play is going to be the difference in that game.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't hate that as much as I think a lot of people will, because the Chiefs are hated. But when you have, I know the Mahomes.
I'm not even like a Mahomes
right
guy either. Like I'm not like a
yeah,
Mahomes.
I know. yeah, but you know he is the best player in the NFL. Like, and so he is going to show up in the playoffs. It'll just depend on that defense, which has been good, but can be a little inconsistent in that receiving core for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the best way to look at it. Like, it's not gonna fall on like if Mahomes is gonna be good enough, because he's gonna be good enough. It's gonna be if everybody else can actually finally step up and help him out.
Who would you have winning? Chiefs Niners? Because we've had that happen before. We've had that happen in 2020.
I think the Niners win it. For sure. I think the defense is just too strong to overcome for the wide receivers to like overcome that. Honestly, like I just don't think it's possible. Yeah. No matter how it's kind of like when the Bucs played the Chiefs. It's not the same situation.
That D-line
you're just getting like killed every play, like to the point where they signed two tackles on both sides that offseason immediately. So.
Oh yeah.
Similar situation there, honestly, in my opinion. But was there anything else? No, you go.
I mean, back to what Matt was saying. If we get in like with that edge rushers in San Francisco, if we get an Eagles-Niners game, that O-line versus D-line matchup will be so fun to watch. Because I mean, you'll have Lane Johnson, who's one of the best offensive tackles of all time. I think we can all admit that. You have Bosa coming at him. You're gonna have Chase Young coming at him. So. If it'll be interesting to see if the Niners can get pressure on Hurts and get past the best offensive line in the NFL. I think that'll kind of decide who makes the Super Bowl between the Eagles and the 49ers.
For sure. That should be
and I also think we have to consider like, you know, what you're saying about Patrick Mahomes, Jet. Like certain players just like when it comes to the playoffs, they're just different, you know, breeds. Yeah. And I think you see that with Mahomes, but I see that with like the entire Eagles team. And that's kind of why I picked them to go to the Super Bowl. But I just don't think Mahomes has the supporting cast around him.
Which is fair.
Especially this year. With those receivers, like, they've been horrible this year. And that defense, like, watching the Raiders game was just, like, frustrating because he's doing so much, but, like, no one's open. The defense isn't giving him any help. Like, there's only so much he can do. And when you're playing the Bills, like, if you were that bad against the Raiders, like, playing the Bills is going to be a whole other story. So...
For sure. I think that the difference between, like, they're at 10 wins right now. The difference between 10 and 12 is a missed PI call. And,
it's close, yeah.
And Kadarius Toney's foot.
That's a good point.
So,
that's a good point.
If they were at 12 wins, I think we'd be looking at them completely differently. So I think it's important to note that those 2 wins are, like, 2 plays, literally. So... Mm-hmm. But I do agree they're weaker than in previous years. It's not the same just dominant Chiefs dynasty that we've kind of had for the last 4 or 5 years.
For sure.
Yeah. Is there anything else we wanted to touch on before we hopped off for the night?
I mean, how do we feel like the rest of this draft is going to pan out? We're going to have a lot of quarterbacks moving up, moving down. You got guys like Jaden Daniels who might move up. Penix just had a big game yesterday against Michigan in
JJ
the college
McCarthy.
football playoff. JJ McCarthy, he's moving up too. So we'll
Yep.
see how those guys. How do we think those guys are going to move up or down, depending on this college football playoff?
I mean, so all that's left in terms of college football playoff is McCarthy and Penix.
Penix, yeah.
I don't see McCarthy moving into the first round, to be honest with you. I mean, up until this last playoff game, he had like 1 touchdown over the last 5 weeks. I don't see it, but if there's somebody that just likes the fact that he was a winner and was just like a competent QB when they needed him to be, I mean, there's teams that draft for that, honestly. There's teams that draft winners. I mean, the Rams pick Stetson Bennett. Obviously, he's better than Stetson Bennett, but that's kind of my similar comparison in terms of the situation they're coming from. Like, the team around them is so good. But as far
like,
as
if Penix goes out and wins the national championship, do you think that could move him high up in this NFL draft?
It's tough. I think people hold animosity towards lefty quarterbacks like a bias for no reason at all, other than the fact that a lot of offenses are designed for right-handed quarterbacks, but it can be adjusted and such. I don't see him moving like inside like the top 5, even with an elite performance. I think the highest I could see him move is into the top 10.
Okay, yeah, I agree. Yeah, and then
I
how
agree
about
with
Quinn
that.
Ewers?
And then,
Well, Matt, finish on Penix, and then we'll move to Quinn Ewers.
yeah, no, I was gonna say something else, but Quinn Ewers, I think it's the same thing with Penix. You know, if they win the national championship, I think he'll be top
Ewers is
10,
out.
but I don't see him.
Ewers is out.
Oh,
Yeah,
I don't know college football.
Texas
Jay, you
lost.
can
Ewers is
take
out.
this.
Yeah, Ewers is out. He's on Texas, so and he didn't have the best performance yesterday, and he was kind of a first round floating around the first round quarterback. So how do we think that loss and that kind of poor performance will affect Ewers' draft stock?
I think second round ceiling. Ceiling second round.
Okay.
Really?
I don't think he goes anywhere in the first, honestly. And there's
Okay.
not a lot of
Yeah.
QB needy teams picking at the back half of the first round, anyways. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and then moving forward with the draft, one thing I wanted to touch on was 2 teams, the Commanders and the Giants, because I think like a few weeks ago we didn't really maybe see these teams as being quarterback teams. You know, Sam Howell is one of the best rookie quarterbacks, but he got benched in favor of Jacoby Brissett, and now the Commanders are projected to have the 4th pick. So it's like, do you guys think that they'll go for a quarterback at that spot? I mean, there could be some really good ones available.
So what I was saying earlier, it just depends if they like a quarterback. I think that's how it goes in the NFL. If you have a guy that you think can be a guy for your franchise, you take him because obviously your team is always built around your quarterback. So with Washington, I feel like there are a lot of best guy available with their draft pick. They could go any position, I feel like. So with Washington, it's just the best guy available. With the Giants, I don't know because reports have come out that they want to stick with Daniel Jones after giving him all that money, which I don't understand why because I think he's a horrible quarterback.
He sucks.
Yeah, so I think that Washington is more inclined to go quarterback than New York Giants just because they don't have a quarterback locked up on a big contract. They can bring in a fresh new quarterback to build a team around as opposed to the Giants have a lot of cap liabilities right now.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. I think Sam Howell showed quite a bit this year, but I think he's also had a great offensive coordinator that's helped him. But also, that offensive line has been horrible. So, like, do you want to throw a rookie quarterback into that situation there?
It just depends if he's your guy, It just depends if you want him. That's the thing.
I mean, Bryce Young was the Panthers guy. That's the thing.
Yeah. So.
And I don't think Bryce Young is bad either. I think that situation is so bad he can't be good.
Yeah, I agree.
think too. Ron Rivera is probably on his way out. So
yeah,
typically when you see a new head coach coming in, you usually see a change of quarterback, unless it's like a really good quarterback. But so that's why I think they could be inclined to draft a rookie. I think one thing too, it depends on if Drake May and Caleb Williams go in the top 3, which could happen if the Bears trade down or someone else trades up to another pick. But I do agree with you, Ty. I think it depends on who's there and if they like someone.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I mean, there's always going to be quarterbacks in every draft. Next year, we have guys like Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, Riley Leonard.
Yeah.
There's going to be decent quarterbacks next year in the draft too. So I feel like with Washington and New York situations, maybe not this year, but next year, and kind of build a team that's ready to have a rookie quarterback.
Well, Cam Ward just declared, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
he's in the draft this year, too.
I saw that. Yeah.
Okay, well,
This is actually,
yeah.
like I was actually going to, like, bring this up, too. Like, next year's quarterback class is significantly weaker, in my opinion, but...
Yeah, but there will always be guys in the draft.
Yeah.
You still have a Dylan Gabriel, maybe step up at Oregon. So
actually, I mean, kind of no though. Like in recent years, there hasn't like the Kenny Pickett year, Malik Willis.
Yeah.
Like I get what you're saying. I do agree. Like guys will rise, and like there definitely will be people that pop up. But I mean, there is something to be said about if there's a lot of good quarterbacks, it might be time to go get one.
Okay, maybe. Yeah. Okay, I see that. I just don't know if you want to rush it.
I'm not one to like give up
Yeah.
on QBs early. I don't think Washington should draft a QB for like personally. So I think that is just a situation where you want to get an offensive lineman or something.
I mean, a lot of these teams too will have like picks at the top of the second round, and this is a draft class where there's a lot of good quarterbacks that'll probably be in the second round. So you could always wait till then as well and have them compete with Howell or Jacoby Brissett or whoever it is.
McCarthy, Bo Nix.
Bo Nix.
Keep going.
Floating around.
Cam Ward
they'll
now.
be Cam Ward. Yeah, if he stays in the draft, I could see that changing. But
okay.
That second round could be quarterback strong. Top of the first round, middle of the second round. So we'll see how that works out. A lot will change with the combine. I mean, quarterbacks rise and fall a lot at the combine. So we got a long way.
I'm definitely curious to see what some of those guys like 40 times are, honestly, because that will impact it. Penix is a guy that's been through injuries and he doesn't run much.
A lot of injuries.
He used to run more at Indiana, and ever since his injuries, he's like pretty much completely stopped. So that'll be an interest if he runs. So.
Mm-hmm.
But
and
I'm curious.
Jaden Daniels too. Jaden Daniels is a guy to look at with that.
Could run a high 4.3
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be exciting to a lot of teams that want to sell some tickets. So that's another name to watch out for. Maybe in the top 3.
Maybe the Giants. Why not the Giants?
Maybe the Patriots. Maybe the Patriots. You know, we'll see. We'll see about Jaden Daniels. He's a superstar. I think so. Yeah.
They're gonna draft Drake May. I'm already calling it.
Bo Nix, second round.
Maybe Caleb Williams. We'll see.
How do you feel about J.J. McCarthy to the Patriots?
Unless we brought in Harbaugh, that's the only way I'd be maybe acceptable of having McCarthy. Just because Harbaugh knows maybe how to use him, but
if you get Harbaugh, then with McCarthy, then you also get somebody that just absolutely loves the QB so much that he would never give up on him no matter what.
That's true. It would feel like another maybe Mac Jones type guy getting J.J. McCarthy.
I think McCarthy's a little more athletic than Mac Jones. I'll give him credit there.
We'll see, but we need to switch it up, I think, and go with somebody that's a little bit more dominant at the quarterback position than J.J. McCarthy. And New England needs a lot of change, so we'll see about that.
Okay. Fair enough. Did anybody have any closing remarks?
I'm all good.
No? Yeah. I think we've covered everything.
All good.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, in that case, we're going to go ahead and head out. It's currently 12:14 a.m. for everybody out there watching on YouTube. We stayed up late to record this one. So really hope y'all enjoy it, but hope y'all are having a happy New Year's, had a good Christmas, all that. So peace out, everybody.
Yeah.